Hello K-Divas, welcome back to my sewing studio where creativity and style merge seamlessly. Today I have something extra special in store for you, and this is a tutorial that's going to add a touch of elegance and flair to your wardrobe. We're going to be diving into the world of off-shoulder ruffle sleeves. Now this sleeve design is the epitome of feminine grace and charm. They're super versatile, timeless, and oh so fashionable. So whether you're headed to a romantic dinner or you just want to elevate your next sewing project, this sleeve design will definitely steal the show. The best part is that you can make them yourself, and I'm here to guide you every step of the way. But wait, there's more. I'll not only be showing you guys how to create this fabulous sleeve design, I'll also be sharing any tips and tricks along the way to make this process as enjoyable as possible. Whether you're a seasoned seamstress or a beginner with a passion for fashion, this tutorial is for you. So grab your sewing machine, your favorite fabric, and let's embark on this stylish journey together. By the end of this tutorial, you'll be flaunting your own off-shoulder ruffle sleeve masterpiece. Are you ready to make a fashion statement? Let's get started. This video is a follow-up of a previous tutorial where I shared how to make the bodice, which is an off-shoulder princess seam bodice. So please see that before you watch this one. So you already have the bodice part of your project done and you're just essentially adding the sleeve. So with that out of the way, I want to mention that your fabric consideration is very important, because if you want the ruffle to stand, you want to choose a fabric that has some structure, preferably woven as well. Here are some options that I think you guys will find useful. I'm using Duchess satin, but you can also consider brocade, denim, organza if you want that like a flowy feathery effect, or jacquard. With the fabrics out of the way, I'm going to be starting off with the sewing pattern for the sleeve. Now this plan is the one that I created from my off-shoulder bodice tutorial, and that's what I'm going to be making my sleeve with. I folded a piece of paper in half, and from the folded edge I'm going to be marking half of my around bicep measurement. This is going to ensure that the sleeve sits comfortably around that top part of your arm, which is around where your elastic tunnel is going to be later on. I'm going to be working with my measurement. I highly recommend you work with yours or that of your client for the absolute best fit and outcome. Mine was 12 inches total, so I divided that by 2, and I've decided to start tracing off the arm curve 6 inches away from the folded edge. Don't forget to transfer the notches to indicate what side is the front or the back. I'm also transferring that top edge that is going to help me know that that's the top of my sleeve. And I'm going to open up the pattern like so, and then I'm going to trace off the other side of the arm curve. So I traced off the front side, and now I'm going to trace off the back, ensuring that the distance from the folded edge to the beginning point of our tracing is the same distance for the first side that I did, which was my front. So now I'm going to trace off the back arm curve, transfer the top of the sleeve, and once I have that done, this is going to be my base. I'm going to be modifying into the sleeve design. First off, I'm going to connect all of the dash lines using my ruler and my marker pen so you guys can clearly see what I'm doing. I'm also going to make sure that the arm curve lines are all connected and visible. With that out of the way, the next thing I'm going to do is decide how long I want my sleeve to be. You can make yours long, but I wanted mine to be above my elbow, so I have marked that length downwards like so, and I'm going to square it across so I have a clear hemline for my sleeve. Then I'm going to mark the around bicep measurement as my hemline as well. I'm going to be slashing and spreading this pattern, so it doesn't really matter if the hem width is too tight. You add later on, you'll see what I mean as we progress. So I'm going in here to draw in the side seam connecting the hem to the arm curve, and to make the ruffly effect that this sleeve has, you essentially have to extend your sleeve upwards. I'm extending mine by 2 inches or roughly 5 centimeters, but if you want to have that butterfly effect where the top and the bottom is the same length, you have to extend the top by your sleeve length. For now, I'm going to be working with 2 inches. I'm going here to add my grain line, connecting all of my points, adding my annotations, and I'm going to add a 1 centimeter seam allowance around my pattern so I know it's already there and I don't have to think about it when it's actually time for me to work with this piece. I'm going to cut out the extra part of the patterns that I don't need before I make any further changes. As I mentioned earlier on, if you want to have this effect, that this white dress have, you would need to raise your sleeve head by the same amount as your sleeve length. So if your sleeve length is 10 inches, you would extend it upwards by 10 inches. If it's 5, you extend it upwards by 5. So the elastic sits right in the middle of your sleeve. Now I'm going to go ahead to cut my sleeve itself, and I have my sleeve pattern here, and I'm going to be slashing right through the middle. This slash is going to allow me to add volume to the middle of my sleeve, and I'm going to separate them and spread them by about 16 inches, which is roughly 41 centimeters. Just know that the wider you spread your pattern, the more dramatic your ruffle will be. So if you want it to be really like bold and very fluttery, you can spread it even more. I'm working with 16 inches, and these I'm going to be adding in the middle of the two patterns. So I'm just going in here to pin down the two panels I have slashed down the middle, and I'm going to draw a chalk line through the top, so that guides me when I'm actually cutting out the fabric. My fabric of choice is Duchess satin, and I'm cutting a pair in one go because I want to use the same fabric to line my sleeve. And I'm going in here to draw the hemline of my sleeve, connecting both panels or pattern pieces together, and I'm essentially just going to cut along the chalk line because my pattern already has a seam allowance included. If yours does not have seam allowance, you can draw your seam allowance straight onto your fabric. You need a seam allowance to join pieces together, because if you don't, what would end up happening is you're stitching away measurements that you actually need for your garment to fit right. Once I have the top and the bottom cut out, I'm going to go ahead to cut out the excess along the arm curve and along the side seam as well. After cutting a pair of the sleeves for one side, you need to repeat the same on the other side before going ahead to stitch everything together. I have pinned right sides facing each other, and I'm going to be sewing along the top edge. This is my way of lining my sleeve, and I just think it will make for a beautiful finish on top. So I'm starting from where my extension point is on the side, and then I'm going to turn and stitch along the top edge, and then when I get to the other side, I'm going to leave my needle in and then continue stitching until I get to my extension point. This I have marked with a chalk, and I'm just going in here to trim down the corners, so when I turn this piece inside out, I'm able to iron everything nice and flat with a nice point. It is important that you notch the point where your extension started from, because that needs to be stitched right into the arm curve, and it needs to align with the shoulder edge of your bodice. So I'm going ahead to turn this thing inside out. I want to push out all of the points and all of the corners, and I'm going to iron everything nice and flat. I'm using steam. I love to iron with steam because it just prevents the fabric from burning, also makes for a clean and beautiful finish as well. With my long meter ruler, I am drawing in with a chalk my stitch line of where my elastic is going to sit. This first line is just the line connecting both points for where the extension starts, and I've grabbed my elastic and I'm just checking to see how wide I want my tunnel to be. This elastic is about 1 inch wide, and the length of the elastic is my around bicep measurement minus about 2 to 3 inches. You want the elastic to stretch across your arm. You also want it to gather in the sleeve to make the beautiful ruffle detail that this sleeve design has. Once I've decided on the width of my tunnel, I'm just going in here to draw in the second line that is going to be on the bottom. I'm going to be stitching along these chalk lines. I find that this just removes the guessing game and the headache of, is my line straight? Is this tunnel the same width from the beginning to the end? Once I have that drawn with the chalk, I might put a pin or two just to catch both layers. And with a normal straight stitch, I'm going to sew along the top line and along the bottom line to create the tunnel, which I'm going to be passing my elastic through. So this is what my tunnel is looking like. So far, so good. The tip I would give for passing elastic through tunnels is to use a safety pin that is wide enough to go through the tunnel without it losing the elastic. So I'll pass the safety pin through the elastic on one end and then use that safety pin to go through the tunnel until I arrive at the other edge. I'm just going in here to tack down the elastic on the seam allowance on this side. I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side, but you can just pin it down if you don't want to sew anything yet. Now this is what my sleeve is looking like so far. The ruffling is already ruffling well, and I'm here for it. And for the side seam, I'm going to be joining them together in such a way that I'll be concealing the seam inside on the wrong side. So I'm going to be joining one side together like so, and then the other side I'm going to be joining in this way. So right sides facing each other for the top and the bottom layer. So once I stitch them down and fold them against each other, we don't see any seams on the inside of the sleeve. I'm sewing only 1 centimeter seam allowance, which is the amount of seam allowance I added to my pattern. I gave it a nice press, and this is what my sleeve is looking like. To finish the hemline, I am going in here and folding it inwards by 1 centimeter or roughly ½ an inch. This is one way I like to finish off hemlines of garments where I know the inner and the outer is the same material. You could also do this by hand if you don't want to see any stitches at all, or you could use fabric glue, the type that when you press down it kind of melts and joins things together. You could use that to finish up the hemline of your sleeve. So once I was done stitching up the sleeve, I'm going to grab it and attach it to the arm curve of my bodice. My bodice is already done, neckline is already finished, hemline is done, just a case of adding the sleeve. So I'm pinning in everything like so, and I'm going to be stitching up the sleeve into the raw arm curve of my bodice. Starting from one edge, I am sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, starting from the notched edge that my sleeve has. And if everything has been done correctly, it should actually perfectly align in such a way that that edge would sit perfectly into the arm curve of your blouse. To finish up the sleeve edge, I just cut like a thin strip of fabric to act as bias tape. I didn't want to overlock this. I wanted a very smooth finish on the inside, so I have cut that thin strip and I'm using it like a bias tape. So I stitched along one edge, and then I'm going back in and rolling the rest of that strip of fabric to cover the seam. That is going to help me finish up the seam of the garment, and because it's a smooth fabric on the inside, it would not irritate my arm as I wear this top over time. So once I was done doing this for one side, I went ahead to repeat it for the other side of the bodice, and this is what the sleeve looks like. I think I like the fact that this sleeve is very simple but still very classy. There's something very timeless about this sleeve design. It's something that you could exaggerate as much as you want, or you could keep it really toned down and really simple if you don't want the ruffling to be too much. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching this tutorial. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your sewing community or anyone that you think will find it useful, and until next time, have a good morning, afternoon and evening wherever you are. Bye.